Introduction. Think big, start small, learn fast. Eric Ries. Opening my business has been the best career decision of my life. I've written. This book is the handbook I was seeking when I transitioned from employee to founder. I hope it inspires you to create your own path. Before opening 30 by 40 Design Workshop, I was searching for a recipe for starting an architecture business. I wanted specifics, a checklist, a step-by-step instruction list to parcel out the monumental into the manageable. I wanted a framework that I could plug into when I had free time, in the early mornings, during my lunch break, and in the evenings. But I couldn't find one. The AIA, American Institute of Architects, publications were uninspired and outdated. The Handbook for Professional Practice and Architects Essentials of Starting a Design Firm each read like contracts. They were primarily written for those intending to build colossal firms, not a sole proprietor building a business. In the 21st century, I found myself laughing at some of the antiquated advice about marketing and software, including a recommendation for PaintShop Pro. Really? I had questions, probably the same questions you have. I wanted to understand how to interview, what kind of website to build, what software I needed, how to structure my contract and how to get paid. What were the real-world business situations I would face? If you've been searching for similar practical information, this book is your field guide. My career in architecture has followed the well-worn path of many architects before me, from professional degree to internship to licensure and on to practice. I graduated with a Bachelor of Architecture in 1996 and pursued design work at varying scales throughout New England, schools, health care facilities, civic institutions and private homes. Most of my working life was spent in a conventional 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., quite often much later, studio environment. I commuted an hour each way, every day, and with every job I held, I completed timesheets accounting for my every 6th minute, 1/10th of an hour, of billable time. I had always worked for someone else and was rewarded for my loyalty every 2 weeks with a paycheck. It felt like a stable existence. Still, I longed for something different. I wanted my own practice. But that was an idea reserved for an indeterminate time far in the future, a time when there was plenty of work and when I was ready. I treated this idea as sacred. It was one that I kept like a trophy on a shelf, where I could pick it up and dust it off occasionally. Every time I entertained the thought, that part inside me that's wired for survival and protection, what Seth Godin calls the lizard brain, protested and logically advised me not to. I found that discussing the idea with friends or family was far easier than actually executing and delivering on the promise. Discussing it, in a way, felt as if I had already done it. Announcing it to others without any sort of accountability satisfied the desire without demanding action. I'd like to have more work lined up before I make a go of it. Probably next year, I would say. Of course, the next year would arrive, my salary would be slightly higher, my children would be 1 year closer to college, and I'd be committed to another design project in the office that I'd want to see finished. Does this sound familiar? Are you this architect or designer? In early 2013, on the cusp of turning 40, my dream job designing high-end homes on the coast of Maine was facing uncertain times. My employer had cut office salaries by 20% and gave us the choice of working for no pay on Fridays or pursuing outside work on those days. I once again picked up that precious trophy, dusted it off, listened to the protests of my lizard brain, and this time, I ignored them. I knew this was my chance to get started building something I could call my own and a business capable of supporting my family. The process of designing architecture, working with clients and building Buildings, that was familiar territory. I knew I could do the work, but at the time, I knew next to nothing about operating a business. So I read. I began with the AIA, American Institute of Architects, Architects Essentials, and the Handbook for Professional Practice. But they seemed to describe a historic past. I was looking for a handbook I could reference when I had a question. I turned to online resources, blogs, forums, and articles and found a group of young professionals grappling with the same problems. The information I discovered there was timely and based on real experiences. These were individuals designing practices like I was, from nothing, and succeeding. I read case studies, listened to podcasts, corresponded with pros who made the leap before me, studied business plans, made lists, sketched out weighted average decision matrices, pondered, and researched some more. Every time I found new information I felt as though I had just scraped the surface of what was available. I had so much more to learn. Research paralysis is common, it's also a subconscious delay tactic. It keeps us safely in the harbor when we need to be fishing. Reading and researching about how to open a design practice is a necessary part of the process. Following others who have built successful businesses too. But as I look back, I can tell you that there's just no substitute for that important first leap. Reading about it can be reassuring, but stepping out is required. One can't possibly know all the questions one needs to ask when sitting in the relative comfort of a salaried job. The experience of sole practice has taught me what no amount of research ever could have. The truth is there's nothing you can do to escape the labor in front of you when you set out on your own. Building a business is hard work. You're investing in an unknown asset, giving it form, shaping it from nothing. Crafting a brand and a business to support you will probably count among the most difficult things you've done in your life. It will also be one of the most rewarding. Opening your own practice offers more job security than any other job could ever provide. This might seem counterintuitive, but remember your current job is subject to change at any moment. If your employer told you that your salary has been reduced by 20% effective tomorrow, would you have any say? When you work for someone else, they control your time and your future, the type of work you'll do, and what you'll be paid in exchange for that work. Your own business, by contrast, is something no one can ever take from you. It's yours, you own it, and you chart the course. It comes at a cost though, hard work, persistence, and much anxiety. In the early stages, accepting these as part of doing business will be challenging. You'll be excited to begin designing, everything will be new and shiny, and as your excitement is peaking, no one else will be listening, except your close friends and family. I've written this book as a catalyst for you to take the actions necessary to open your own design practice. It isn't a singular vision of how to do it though. There are many ways to practice your craft today. Begin to think like an entrepreneur, and you'll see opportunity everywhere. This book will instill in you the confidence that it's possible to build a life and practice that rewards your individual talents and skills. If you choose, it can be a life that doesn't trade time or hours worked for dollars. The text is designed to remove the barriers you'll encounter along the way and answer the basic questions all business owners face. Because I know that even simple barriers can be cleverly used as an excuse, a red light, for not progressing. Opening your design practice doesn't require all the lights to be green. It all starts with action. One mindset. If you really want to do something, you'll find a way. If you don't, you'll find an excuse. Jim Rohn. Have you ever tried to brew your own beer? If you have, you know that homebrewing is a unique combination of cooking, drinking, and science. I Decided I wanted to give it a try, and so I purchased a starter kit, found a recipe for a pale ale and purchased the ingredients: hops, yeast, and grain. What could be more satisfying than freshly brewed homemade ale? As I read the recipe, each step sounded simple, but the sum total, the entire process, wasn't at all. The questions started to mount. How long should I mash the grains? At what temperature? The airlock isn't bubbling. Is the fermentation stuck? Do I have enough yeast to naturally carbonate? Is the water hot enough? Is it too soft or too hard? How do I keep things from boiling over? There were grains to crack, wort to boil, hops to add, yeast to pitch, finished beer to bottle. And finally, 3 weeks later, fresh ale to drink. In the end, the beer came out fine. Not great, just fine. With some practice I could have made it better, probably much better. But I learned that just because I like ale, it doesn't mean I need make it myself. I don't need to own a microbrewery. Starting your own design practice is like this too. As is often the case, many simple steps taken together coalesce into a great deal of work. Do you need to own the firm to enjoy practicing architecture or interior design? Maybe not. To determine whether you're mentally ready for the work ahead, establishing the proper mindset is your first task. CEO and architect. Deciding to open your own design practice requires a fundamental shift in attitude toward the making of architecture. You're a business owner first. To survive in the long term, a business expenses must be lower than their assets. It's that simple. You must prioritize learning to be a businessperson over being an architect. This is especially crucial when you're staking your claim and building your reputation. This isn't to say that everything you love about architecture has to be packed up and traded away when you assume the role as CEO of your business. It just means that design will have a different place in your operations, and occasionally, it may even defer to your business decisions. Not long after opening my practice, I was approached by a potential client. Like me, he had a young family, he wanted a small home, and of course he had an even smaller budget. I could relate to his position. I had been in that exact spot a few years earlier. I remember looking at the existing, extremely expensive housing stock and feeling disheartened. I wanted to help him design his home. It was an interesting project, and small is what I do well. But it quickly became clear that he was interviewing many architects. More than 6 is a sure sign of indecisiveness. For a chance at an extremely small fee, a sign of unrealistic expectations. I quoted him a price. Before agreeing to step into the pool interviewees, I proposed a fee that would have allowed me to remain profitable, and I suggested that given his budget he needed me even more. I never heard from him again. Just because I love designing small homes doesn't mean I can do it for free, and small projects with small budgets are just as much, if not more, work than the larger ones. In that situation, I prioritized business over design, and I'm glad I did, because it left room on my boards for the next project, one more aligned with the value that I offer. And there's always a next project. I won't always accept jobs based on profitability, but I want the flexibility to be selective. Imagine if every project I accepted had a razor-thin margin of profitability. It's the worst possible position to be in, always behind, always struggling, with no room for error. Prioritizing profitability builds in flexibility to your operations. It allows you to carefully consider and accept only those unprofitable projects that have the most impact, in your community, in your business, wherever you decide. This is the kind of mindset you'll have to adopt if you're to take seriously the step of starting your design practice. Amateur versus professional. I started my business moonlighting while Working at another firm. Like many other architects, I treated this work more as a hobby than a business. I was a professional treating my side work as an amateur, and consequently, there was very little financially at stake. If a client put a project on hold indefinitely, it only meant that some of my discretionary income went down. It didn't mean I couldn't afford my utility bill. I didn't run P+L reports. I didn't have to take a client meeting on a Saturday if I didn't want to. If the work came to me, I would gladly do it, but I wasn't planning to build something larger. Extra cash in my pocket was nice, but there wasn't any pressure to actively market myself or create a repetitive formula for success. There's an important distinction between practicing your craft as an amateur and doing it as a professional. Because there's nothing at stake, the amateur isn't committed to long-term success, only short-term gains. Professionals are invested in success and have a long-term plan for making it happen. Perhaps most importantly, the professional realizes that every action has real, legal implications. It's an intimidating thought. But your professional reputation is built on each one of these actions. When you're an amateur, the gray areas of practice will consistently challenge you. The amateur treats earnings from a moonlighting job as spending money, ignoring the quarterly tax due. Clients will ask that you look the other way and ignore the building code offering. No one will know. Gray areas are for amateurs. The professional is unflinching and decisive in their commitment to always follow the rules. Which reputation would you prefer to have? You can't afford to do favors or look the other way. It's your professional reputation and our profession at stake. You have a legal professional obligation to uphold. It's one that you agreed to when you became a licensed professional. You have a duty to serve and protect the public. If you encounter situations where these things are required of you, simply walk away. Being a pro also requires committing the necessary time and effort to running your business professionally. There's a lot more to running a design practice than design. You'll probably spend fewer hours designing than ever before when you open your own business. There's marketing, invoicing, closing deals, clients to meet, contractors asking questions, consultants to coordinate, site visits, phone calls to take and make, emails to answer, and letters to write. These things take time, and usually that's time taken away from design duties. Unfortunately, assuming a professional role means that the time spent designing architecture is more limited. If you're the kind of person who needs large doses of daily design time, opening your own business isn't the best way to get your fix. You're probably better off working as an employee in a firm that prioritizes design and can secure the projects you'll design. You'll be busy running the business first, invoicing, marketing, paying bills, doing taxes, ordering office supplies, finishing the drawings for your current project, writing meeting notes. Professional status carries with it a responsibility to represent all architects well. Serve your clients' needs, orchestrate solutions, seek adequate compensation for the value you bring, and do good work. You owe it to your colleagues to uphold the high standards of the profession. When you're working for someone else, they carry that mantle. When you step out on your own, you carry it. When you can commit to being a professional rather than an amateur, you're ready to tackle the next mindset problem. Overcoming fear of failure. To be honest, facing my fear of failure was a larger hurdle than almost anything I've encountered in business. What I've come to accept is that it's all a matter of perception. One can either choose to acknowledge the fear, accept it and let it pass, or one can be paralyzed by it. It's an easy decision when you frame it like that, right? You can't change the fact that you'll feel the fear, only how you react to it. Here are a few tactics that helped me acknowledge, accept, and move forward despite my fears. 1. Imagine the worst possible outcome. The first step to making your business Venture real is to actually allow your brain to imagine it. And, the most pressing question, the one that's keeping you from committing, is, what if I fail? You need to honestly answer the question. What if you fail? Write down the answer. On a sheet of paper, make it real. If you leave your current job to make a run at this and it fails, meaning no clients, no income, no one calling, what then? Will you lose your home? Will you lose the respect of your peers, your family, and your friends? Will you have lost your life savings to make your dream a reality? Define what's really at stake. There's an answer to each of these questions. For me, after working through those questions, I arrived at the following worst case conclusion: I'll have to find another job. For you, it may be different. I found this worst case conclusion to be somewhat circular. The worst case wasn't actually that bad. It was one I was already familiar with, a job working for someone else. Ready for the bonus? You may even find a better job than you have now. When you learn to embrace the fear, accept it and let it go by logically thinking through the range of possible outcomes, you own it, it doesn't own you. 2. Redefine success and failure. What do they really mean? Are they monetary thresholds? Professional recognition? Family recognition? Spousal acceptance? Personal happiness? Something else? It's easy to adopt the definitions of these terms from our societal norms: the expensive car, the waterfront property, the boat, and exotic vacations. Would having these define success or not having them define failure for you? When pressed, most of us would define success very simply: to control how we spend our time, to be mentally fulfilled, and to feel necessary. These all contribute to our happiness and are the real feelings underlying our definitions of success. Too often the definition of success or failure replaces these emotional values with forthright expressions of wealth because that's what we've been acculturated to, not because they're what really matter to us. You're probably afraid to fail because you won't be seen as successful. But consider whether your current job is meeting your definition of success. If you're unhappy, then you've already failed. You've already been there. You know what it feels like. Is your family judging you for this? Probably not. Are your friends? Other professionals? If you accept that you've already failed, then the choice to try again is an easy one. Perhaps you should be more afraid of not trying than trying and failing. Articulating your definition of success and establishing goals for your business and your personal life creates a reliable framework for the decisions you'll face along the way. When the road forks, you'll choose the path that contributes to those goals and ultimately your definition of what it means to be successful. Many perceive the act of opening a business as a singular act, one that they either pass or fail at. I believe this is a flawed perception. Opening a business isn't a zero-sum game. You'll always walk away with more than you started with. More knowledge, a better understanding of the world, more connections, and a dose of pride that you actually tried and didn't let the dream languish in a perpetual state of, yes, I plan to open my practice one day, but the time isn't quite right. You can always earn another dollar, but you'll never earn another minute. Time is a finite resource. We only have a limited and unknowable amount of it to invest. Having control of my time and how I invest it is my ultimate definition of a successful life. I want to have the flexibility to explore and learn new things each day and control my own time. I've designed my business as an instrument to allow that to happen. By opening your own business, you're embracing the opportunity to shape your future. As an employee, you're building someone else's definition of success. 3. Just get started. We're all guilty of research paralysis. There will always be Another blog post or book to read, another case study to take notes on, another person's advice to solicit. But there's just no substitute for actually doing the work. Digging into a set of tasks, especially rote ones, will help quiet your internal anxieties and quell your fears. Busy your mind solving genuine business problems rather than prognosticating on failure. You can tick off the checkboxes of necessary business tasks from the relative safety of your current job. Along the way, you'll formulate new questions, the things you didn't know that you didn't know. Leverage the natural transition points that happen throughout your normal day. Whether it's the early morning, evenings, on your commute, if possible, or during lunch. Find the time you focus best and dedicate it to starting your business. I work best in the morning and use that time to lay the foundations of my business. You can too. There's no escaping the fact that starting your own business, aside from assuming great personal and professional responsibility, requires plenty of extra time and hours. Working consistently, day after day in your spare time not only gets you closer to the reality, but it establishes the kind of work habits you'll need to make your business succeed. You'll be amazed at the results of consistently applied effort can yield. These short snippets of focus time are good opportunities to flesh out branding and logo designs, your business card, content creation, writing, web design, and a time to develop your business standard operating procedures. You can begin today, right now if you choose. 4. List the pros and cons. It helps to rationally look at the positives and negatives, and I like lists, so here's one I developed when I was contemplating the possibility of opening my practice. The parentheses indicate whether I think they're a net positive or negative. Your answers may differ. Time, plus. This is first on the list because it's the most important asset we have. And it's the one thing you can never get more of. Using time for its highest and best purpose should be everyone's goal. At the end of your life you'll always want more. But, take today as an example and carefully look at the time you've wasted, commuting, reading BuzzFeed, checking email. Are you treating it like the precious resource it really is? The first thing I noticed when I stopped working for someone else was the amount of time I spent commuting. A full 2, or more depending on traffic, hours each day just moving my body back and forth between my home and an office. That's 10 hours a week, 500 hours a year. Think of what you could do with 500 hours of extra time. At $100 per hour, a conservative hourly rate, that's $50,000 of additional income before taxes. But that's just a financial accounting of the value of time. It's impossible to put a price on being there to watch your children grow up, or extra time with a spouse or your family. Controlling your schedule, the things you work on, the people you work with, what projects you accept or reject, owning your time is a huge win. Starting your own business means you spend time on the things you think are most important. Benefits. If you work in a place that provides fringe benefits, you'll suddenly realize how valuable and expensive they are. You'll be responsible for saving for retirement, for health and life insurance yourself now. This is a personal decision that may be a pro or a con. Either way, it's a necessary one, especially if you have a family responsibility, plus or minus. Initially, the idea that you call all the shots is an invigorating feeling. But shouldering all of the responsibility, all of the time, is a lonely and thankless job. You make the coffee, you clean, you set the budget, develop the design concept, do the drafting, answer the phone, manage angry clients, do the invoicing, market the business, secure new work, show up for the interview, attend the public hearing, write the specifications, and so on. To make the business a success, it's all required, none of it can slip. There's nowhere for it slip to, everything stops with you. There's no getting around the fact that owning a business is a lot of hard work. It's a lot for one person to handle. If the thought is too overwhelming, consider a partner who can complement your skill set and share in the responsibility of running the business. Taxes, plus or minus. This can be a positive or a negative depending on a variety of factors, not the least of which being how much you actually earn. Rent, utilities, books, magazines, fees, advertising, supplies, printers, computers, and furniture. These are your expenses. You'll bill for your products and services. This is your revenue. Subtracting your expenses from your revenue yields your net profit. This number is looked at and taxed in differing ways by the IRS depending on your business structure. We'll discuss the details in the following chapter, as a rough estimate. For those living in the United States, assume that your tax liability will total nearly half your net profit. That's right, almost half of your net profit will go to taxes. But there are ways to mitigate this, and we'll get into those in the next chapter. Don't get too discouraged yet. Keep meticulous records from the beginning and use a tax professional to help you sort the details to be sure you're abiding by all the rules and taking advantage of everything you possibly can. Hiring professionals to help with this aspect of your business is mandatory. If something goes wrong, you'll need a team of professionals knowledgeable in the details by your side and to ensure this doesn't weigh too far in the negative column. Availability. As a business owner, people have an expectation that you'll always make yourself available and accessible to them. Some professionals can accept this kind of personal intrusion, some can't. It's important to draw up the boundaries of what you're comfortable with and stick to them. I don't answer my business phone after 4 p.m. and I try to avoid meetings on evenings or weekends. This balances my availability for my clients and business relationships with my family life. I've set my business up like this to ensure that I work with people who understand and sympathize with this kind of work-life balance. They're happy to schedule their project meetings around my professional business hours. I look at it this way: I don't demand that my doctor see me when it's most convenient for me on the weekend. Do you? Why then should someone have that expectation of their architect? Emotional availability can be tough on your family. Your business can consume much of your mental resources. You're heavily invested in its success. Your family will know when your mind is elsewhere. If you work out of your home and you're one to visit your office frequently, remind yourself of the boundaries you've set for your clients and family. Respect your covenants and honor them. Availability can be a strong negative if you let it design autonomy, plus if you've worked for someone else for any length of time, you'll greet this as a huge positive. It's your chance to prove your skills. You'll probably find it challenging in different ways, without input from others. Design autonomy can be stress-inducing, especially if you're under pressure to perform for a deadline. Crafting an aesthetic that's uniquely you is not only rewarding but helps distinguish you from your competitors and build your brand. Flexibility, plus. This was a strong vote in favor of starting my business, a high mass item. Working for yourself means you no longer have to ask for time off or worry about going for a hike in the middle of the day. You can attend your child's afternoon concert if you choose, or grocery shop on a Tuesday morning when no one is there. Taken in large measure, flexibility, especially without discipline, can lead to poor business outcomes. Use it to your advantage, not to avoid the work in front of you. I keep a rough schedule outline for each day, and so the most important tasks each day get first crack at my creative stores of energy and are completed first. These are tasks that I develop saying, if I complete these 4 things today, I will have moved the business forward and it will have been a success. With limited exception, I make in the mornings and manage in the afternoons. Within that framework, there's flexibility baked in. My children's routine happens in the morning, I exercise in the middle of the day, then more children's activities and homework in the afternoons. I'm present in their lives more than ever because my business allows and prioritizes it. Financial, plus or minus. There's great risk and great rewards to be had in owning your own business. It's crucial to structure your business to protect your personal assets as much as possible. Hint, it's not a sole proprietorship. Building is expensive and mistakes are costly. Here's where being pro comes in again. Professional billing rates for professional services demand that you back them up with insurance to safeguard against legal action. A former employer of mine would always say, being sued is not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And even though he operated a small firm of 6, he was involved in a lawsuit for something that he had no purview over. It happens. The upside is that when you fill your boards with work, or even partially fill them, and set a reasonable billing rate, you'll have given yourself a large pay increase from your previous job. If you practice the lean startup model, which we'll be discussing, you'll be consistently building a longer and longer runway, keeping you in business and profitable. I'll never forget the first time that I received a $30,000 check in the mail. It took a lot of willpower to keep from running out and buying a new car. Instead, I banked it, deducted the taxes and calculated how much longer that figure would keep my business operating. When played right, these sums can stretch a long way. Management. You probably didn't enter the design field because you excelled at managing. I'm talking about the day-to-day business operations. Professional relationships and employees, none of these are easy. Most designers resent the fact that these tasks rob them of design time. But, not only is it essential, it can be turned into a positive, especially if you accept it and treat it as its own design project. Develop a conceptual framework, rally the disparate parties, propose solutions, organize, and develop a budget and schedule. Not so bad, right? Isolation. If you'll be practicing on your own, especially if it's out of your home, professional isolation is a real mental hurdle you'll need to come to terms with. Even if you consider yourself an introvert, it won't be easy. When I first moved to Maine, where I live and practice now, I transitioned from a very large firm, 150 plus, to working for a firm of 8, and it was difficult. In the large firm I had a huge circle of colleagues and entire departments I could learn from and leverage as needed. They had entire divisions dedicated to specification writing, code compliance, presentation, production, and design. In the smaller firm I had fewer colleagues and far fewer resources to draw upon. Given that the smaller firm was doing solely residential work, not all of those resources were necessary, but the personal interactions were welcome, especially when I was stuck on a problem and needed an impromptu crit. If you're a firm of 1, you'll be responsible for getting all of the work done. You navigate the design challenges and provide the ideas, the innovations, and the brute force. There are ways to mitigate this sense of isolation by using a co-working space, scheduling regular networking events, or meeting other small business owners and like-minded entrepreneurs. Join online communities like Entrepreneur Architect, The Business of Architecture, Big Time Small Firm, and Archispeak. You can build a circle of friends on platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and there's always Skype to solicit feedback from former colleagues or close friends. Planning your days to force human interaction is another way of not feeling as if you're a hermit. If you have enough work but aren't ready to hire a full-time employee, you can hire from an online community work pool, which will mitigate some of the burden of responsibility for getting everything done that you're bound to resent with time. In summary, the pros are owning your time, flexibility, schedule, Financial benefits, set your own rates, no, or limited, commute, owning time again. Design autonomy, you build your brand, not someone else's. Being a business owner, responsibility, tax advantages. And the cons are: you're responsible for everything, if it fails it's all on you. Business is always there, physically in your home, mentally occupying your thoughts, availability for clients, weekends, evenings, holidays. Accounting, invoicing, chasing payments, managing clients. Contractors, you, difficult phone calls, marketing, financial risk and uncertainty, hardship, fewer vacations, isolation, tax disadvantages. This list isn't meant to be all-inclusive, you'll probably have additional factors to consider. But the basics are there. You'll notice that the list of negatives is longer than the list of positives. So the logical question is, why would I, or anyone, still choose to make a go of it? For me, it's because the relative mass of the items on the pro list far outweigh the negatives. Time alone is worth more than the sum total of the counterarguments on the con list. Action items, I use lists frequently and I encourage you to develop them whenever possible, even if you're the type of person who doesn't rely on lists to accomplish things. The real value in making a list is the mental act of planning that accompanies it. Develop your own list of the pros and cons of opening your own practice. When you're done, evaluate it and decide whether the positives outweigh the negatives. Next, define precisely what success would look like to you and write it down. If it's too abstract an exercise, try envisioning what a typical day would look like 5 years in the future. Or try writing the About page for your future firm's website. Keep this success statement somewhere visible to you in your workspace as a visible prompt for what's important. In moments of weakness and doubt, use it as a reminder of why you're doing what you're doing.